highlight the typical real estate contract is a bilateral contract. Now this is the part that I think a lot of people have problems with. So here we go. I'm going to slow it down, and it doesn't have a lot of highlights for you, but I know that it's in our cram course, so I know you need to know this. The valid, void, voidable, and unenforceable contracts. So if I was you, I'd put a bracket to the side of this one and make sure you know them. A valid contract is to be created easily if all the required elements are present. The parties must have highlight legal capacity. So I would highlight legal capacity. There must be an offer by one party and an acceptance by another party. Highlight offer and acceptance. Number 3, it must be a lawful object. Highlight lawful object. Number 4, there must be some form of consideration or payment supporting the contract. And number 5, the contract may have to be in writing. All real estate contracts have to be in writing. Each of these elements is discussed in the next section. Elements of a valid contract. Highlight, a void contract is one that has no legal effect from its inception. An agreement to do something that was illegal is void. You have to know that for the state exam. Avoidable contract, you have to know all these right here, and they're not highlighted, but I know you need to know them. Avoidable contract is one that may be, it says disavowed by one or both parties, depending on the circumstances. An example of avoidable contract is one that somebody signs while intoxicated. So it's voidable because when they came into the contract, it was something that wasn't valid. Like another one would be maybe somebody that's underage, like they go into escrow and they find out later that the person who bought the house was 16 instead of 18, okay? An unenforceable contract is a valid contract on its face, but its enforcement would violate some law. An example of an oral contract on a matter that law requires to be in writing. An oral contract to purchase real estate is unenforceable because real estate must be in writing, okay? Elements of a contract. So we need to go forward on that. Here we are, right there. Elements of a contract, highlight in yellow, legal capacity to contract. Highlight all parties must have the legal capacity to contract. Number 2, highlight a minor in California is anybody younger than 18, generally cannot contract concerning real estate. Now, of course, if they're emancipated, which means they went to court and they have a court order that says that they are completely emancipated, then they would have the ability to go under contract, okay? There's nothing on the top of page 177, but underneath the gray box, I want you to highlight any minor may receive property as a gift or an inheritance. Now, I'm going to stop there for a second because I got to tell you, I get a lot of referrals from attorneys, and one of the times my attorney called me and he said, see, this is why you have to be so careful, and people who own real estate do not understand a lot of the things about the most important property, the most important investment in their life. And it's a story about a couple, husband and wife, perfectly happy. Their children were 12 and they were like 3 years apart, so 12 and 15. And what the parents did was they thought, okay, in case something happens to us, instead of doing a living trust, which they should have done, what they did was they added their kids to title. So they put a 13-year-old and a 15-year-old on the deed to their home, okay? Because they can inherit it and they can get it as a gift, so they got it as a gift. Well, what happened was a few years later, when the 15-year-old was 17 and the other one was like 13, 14, 15. 15 and 17 is how old they were when I was asked about this. Husband and wife going through a divorce. And in the divorce court, they're trying to sell the property. Well, they can't sell the property because the kids can't sign off on it. They're not 18. They're on title. You have to get their signatures. So they asked me what they could do. I said, well, you might be able to go to the court and talk to the judge and get something fixed. Maybe, I don't know, a quiet title action. I don't know. You have to ask an attorney. So my attorney was saying, well, what's the easiest way? And I said, honestly, wait till the youngest kid's 18 and they can sign off. So that's why it's so important not to mess with your title when you have real estate. On the next page, yes?
What was the highlight on page 176.
On page 176, the highlight was the very first sentence. Then you go down after valid, voidable, and all those, where it says a valid contract. I'm sorry, where it says a void contract. You're highlighting the one sentence that says void contract, but you need to know the void contract, the voidable contract, the unenforceable contract. Those are ones that you have to know. So I'd make sure you have those in your head. And then you have to highlight number 1, a legal capacity to contract, and all parties must have legal capacity to contract. And then the first sentence in the next paragraph, a minor. So I don't want to sound really pushy today, you guys, but we have a lot of pages today. So you really, really have to pay attention. And if you have to go to the restroom, run and come back. Don't miss anything, because today is going to be action-packed. And as for questions, try to keep the questions down today, because like I said, we have a ton of pages. So what's the question we have right now?
I'm not completely clear on the difference between void and voidable.
Okay, so the easiest way to be completely clear on void and voidable is to Google it and look at the difference, literally. It says a void contract is one that had, circle it, no legal effect from the very beginning, okay? So in the very beginning, you went into contract with a 16-year-old. It wasn't valid in the first place. You could never do that contract. So it's a void contract, okay? A voidable contract is one that may be, it says disavowed by one or both parties depending on the circumstances. An example of a voidable contract is one that someone signs while they're intoxicated. So it was valid because they were of age, but they really weren't, they didn't have all their grounds with them. They had been drinking